Hello, my name is Andrew Lucibella. I recently completed the History Master's program at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and as part of my coursework there, I worked with Lexington Historical Society to research Black residents of Lexington in the 18th century. The impetus for this research comes from the Historical Society looking to give voice to those stories that have largely gone untold in the presentation of the town's history to this point. My research focused on the Hancock Clark House, where we know that two enslaved individuals lived and worked in the 18th century. A surviving bill of sale shows that Jack was purchased in 1728 using 85 pounds of town money, and he was enslaved by the Reverend John Hancock, who was the Reverend in Lexington at that time. We don't know specifically what Jack would have been doing on a day-to-day basis, but he likely did a lot of outdoor work tending to the Hancock family farm in order to give the Reverend more time to focus on his preaching. We also know that Jack likely shared the house with Dinah, an enslaved woman who worked personally for Elizabeth Hancock, in about the same period. We don't know exactly Dinah's origins, but we do know she was baptized into the congregation in Lexington in 1759 by Reverend Hancock's successor, Jonas Clark. Jonas Clark and Dinah and Elizabeth Hancock would have shared the parsonage for the early months of Clark's ministry before Elizabeth Hancock died in 1760. Now, we don't know exactly Dinah's freedom status after this point. It's possible she was freed in Elizabeth Hancock's will, but we don't know that for sure. What we do know is that Dinah continued to live with members of the Hancock family for decades. As late as 1787, John Hancock III, the famous one, the Patriot, is billed for over 12 years of boarding and clothing Dinah while she was living in Dorchester with Elizabeth Hancock's daughter and her husband. Now, in the second half of the 18th century, numbers of enslaved people in Lexington decline. It reaches its peak in 1754 when 24 enslaved individuals are living in the town. By the outbreak of the American Revolution in 1775, there are 6 people that are still enslaved. One of those people you may be familiar with, his name was Prince Estabrook, and he's been subject of a lot of research in the last 20 or 30 years. He was wounded on April 19, 1775, and would go on to earn his freedom by fighting in the American Revolution in a variety of engagements, which was a fairly typical way that enslaved men would earn their freedom. Two names you may be less familiar with are Eli and Silas Perdue, who were cousins. Eli Perdue was born free, but after he was orphaned at age 3 and became a ward of the town, he was indentured, which means he was basically enslaved for a period of time to a member of the town, in this case Joseph Bridge. His indenture contract was set to expire on January 1st, 1776, but for the first 18 or so years of his life, he was virtually enslaved to Joseph Bridge. He was forbidden from entering taverns. He was forbidden from playing games. And so he really had his rights and freedoms stripped in the same way that enslaved people would have had their freedoms and rights stripped from them. It's likely that he was also present April 19, 1775. His master, Joseph Bridge, was on the battle green that day, and 19th century historian Charles Hudson lists him as a member of Captain Parker's militia. We don't know exactly what happened to Eli after the war, but we do know that his cousin Silas Perdue was born free and stayed that way throughout his life. He claims to be present on the battle green April 19, 1775. He applied for a federal military pension in 1832, and on that application he claimed to be there, but we don't have any proof of that claim. We do know that he served in several military engagements towards the end of the war in the early 1780s. He recalls celebrating General Washington's victory over Cornwallis in the 1780s, and served in a lot of engagements in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, and New England during that time. After the war, he moves to Reading, Vermont, where he becomes a really active citizen in that town. He signs petitions, he engages in business dealings, so he becomes a very active participant after he left Lexington to the conclusion of the war. Now, these stories are just scratching the surface of those that exist for Black residents in Lexington, but as more research is done, more of these stories will come to light, And telling those stories will give us the opportunity to tell a more complete history of the town of Lexington, and one that gives equal weight to all of the inhabitants of the town throughout history. So it was a really great experience to undertake this research, and I hope that Lexington Historical Society will continue to give voice to those stories.